The spring sun cast long shadows across the graveyard as Pearl Patterson fell to her knees, her black morning dress pooling around her like spilled ink against the fresh dirt. Her tears carved clean paths down her dust-streaked face as she pressed a trembling hand against the crude wooden marker. The name Thomas Patterson was burned into the wood, the letters still fresh and dark, just like the pain in her heart. Wyoming Territory, 1876. A place where life was as harsh as the landscape, and death was an unwelcome but frequent visitor. Pearl had buried her father just yesterday, the last of her family, leaving her alone in a world that showed little mercy to a woman without protection. "Pa!" she whispered, her voice breaking. "What am I supposed to do now?" The sound of approaching hoofbeats barely registered through her grief. She didn't look up, not even when they stopped nearby, not even when she heard the soft thud of boots hitting the ground. "Madam," the voice was deep, respectful. "I don't mean to intrude on your sorrow." Pearl wiped her tears with the back of her hand, but they were quickly replaced by fresh ones. She still didn't look up. The stranger stepped closer, his spurs jingling softly with each step. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a dusty boot, then a pair of worn denim pants. When she finally raised her gaze, she saw a tall man standing beside her, his hat held respectfully in his hands. The setting sun caught in his sandy brown hair, creating a halo effect that seemed almost divine against the darkening sky. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said softly. His face was weathered by sun and wind, but his eyes were the clearest blue she'd ever seen, like the summer sky after a rainstorm. He couldn't have been much older than her own 22 years, but there was something in those eyes that spoke of experiences beyond his years. "Thank you," Pearl managed, her voice barely audible. He knelt down beside her, careful to keep a respectful distance. "Was he family?" "My father," she said, fresh tears springing to her eyes. "The fever took him. I've got no one left now." The stranger was quiet for a moment, seemingly studying the crude grave marker. "I lost my pa when I was 15, he finally said. "Ma followed him 2 years later. I understand the emptiness." Pearl looked at him then, really looked at him. His face was compassionate but not pitying. There was strength there, and a genuine understanding that she hadn't expected to find in a stranger. "I'm Cole Blackwell," he said, offering a calloused hand. "Pearl Patterson," she replied, hesitantly taking it. Cole's grip was firm but gentle. "Miss Patterson, I know it might not seem like it now, but you won't always hurt this badly." Fresh tears welled in her eyes, and she turned away, embarrassed by her inability to control her emotions. "I don't know what to do," she admitted. "The ranch, I can't run it alone. The bank will take it. I'll have nothing." Cole placed his hat back on his head, adjusted it, and then looked at her with a determined expression. "Miss Patterson, I can't bring your pa back, but I promise you this." He paused, his voice growing even more sincere. "You won't have to cry alone anymore. Not if I can help it." In that moment, with the sun setting behind them, casting long shadows across her father's grave, Pearl felt something shift inside her. It wasn't hope. Not yet, her grief was still too raw for that, but perhaps it was the first hint that hope might one day return. "Why would you help me?" she asked, wiping her tears. "You don't know me." "I know what it's like to feel alone in the world," Cole replied. "And out here, folks need to look out for each other. It's the only way to survive." He stood and offered his hand to help her up. After a moment's hesitation, Pearl took it, allowing him to pull her to her feet. Her legs felt unsteady, whether from kneeling so long or from the weight of her grief. She couldn't tell. "I've got a room at the boarding house in town," she said. "The ranch is a half-day's ride south." Cole nodded. "I'm headed that way myself. If you don't mind the company, I could ride with you tomorrow. Take a look at what needs doing at your place." Pearl studied him, trying to determine his motives. In her experience, men didn't offer help without expecting something in return. But there was something in Cole's eyes, a sincerity that made her want to trust him. "I don't have much to pay you with," she admitted. "I'm not asking for payment, Miss Patterson. Just offering a helping hand to a neighbor in need." The word neighbor caught her attention. "You live nearby?" "Bought the old Miller place about a month back," he said. "Been fixing it up. Looks like we're neighbors, about 5 miles apart." For the first time since her father fell ill, Pearl felt a tiny spark of something other than despair. Not quite relief, but perhaps the promise of it. She looked back at her father's grave. "Pa always said to trust my instincts," she murmured, more to herself than to Cole. "Sounds like a wise man," Cole replied. Pearl took a deep breath and nodded. "All right, Mr. Blackwell. I accept your offer of help." "Cole," he corrected gently. "Mr. Blackwell was my father." "Cole," she repeated, and for a brief moment, the weight on her heart felt just a little lighter. As they walked away from the graveyard, Pearl glanced back one last time at her father's grave. "Goodbye, Pa," she whispered. "I'll make you proud." Cole said nothing, but his presence beside her was steady, a silent promise kept. The sun had fully risen by the time Pearl and Cole reached the Patterson ranch the next day. The property came into view as they crested a small hill, a modest one-story cabin with a barn and corral beside it. A few cattle grazed in the distance, but not nearly enough to make the ranch profitable. "It's not much," Pearl said, feeling defensive despite herself. "But it's home." Cole surveyed the property with a critical but appreciative eye. "Good land, good water source. Your pa chose well." They dismounted in front of the cabin, and Pearl felt a wave of emotion wash over her as she opened the door. Everything was exactly as she'd left it when she'd taken her father to town to see the doctor 2 weeks ago. His pipe still sat on the small table by his chair. His boots stood by the door. Cole remained outside, giving her space to collect herself. When she finally emerged, her eyes were dry but red-rimmed. "I'll need to check the cattle," she said, all business now. "And the fences on the north side were damaged in the last storm." Cole nodded. "I'll start with the barn, check on the horses and equipment. Then I can take a look at those fences." For the next several days they fell into a rhythm. Cole would arrive at dawn, and they would work side by side until dusk. He fixed fences, repaired the leaking roof, and helped move the cattle to better grazing land. Pearl cooked their midday meals, kept the books, and handled the chickens and garden. They talked as they worked, casual conversation at first, then deeper discussions as the days passed. Pearl learned that Cole had worked as a cowhand across several territories before saving enough to buy his own place. He'd fought in the war as a young man, though he didn't speak much about those years. In turn, she told him about growing up on the ranch, about losing her mother to childbirth when Pearl was just 14, and how she and her father had managed on their own until the fever took him too. A week turned into 2, then 3. The ranch began to look less neglected, more hopeful. And something else was growing too, something neither of them acknowledged but both felt each time their hands accidentally touched, or their eyes met across the dinner table. On a warm evening in late May, they sat on the porch after a long day's work. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, casting a gentle glow over the land. "I rode by the bank today," Cole said, breaking a comfortable silence. "Spoke to Mr. Henderson." Pearl tensed. The banker had been pressing her about the mortgage payment since before her father's death. "And?" she asked, afraid to hear the answer. "I explained that the ranch is getting back on its feet. Asked for an extension on your next payment." Pearl's heart sank. "He said no, didn't he? He's been wanting this land for years." To her surprise, Cole smiled. Actually, he agreed to give you until the fall roundup. Said he was impressed by how much the place has improved. Relief flooded through Pearl, followed quickly by gratitude. I don't know how to thank you. No need for thanks. It's what neighbors do. But they both knew it was more than that. Cole had spent every daylight hour of the past 3 weeks helping her, asking nothing in return. No neighbor would do that, not without reason. Why are you really helping me, Cole? Pearl asked quietly, voicing the question that had lingered in her mind. Cole looked at her, his blue eyes serious in the fading light. At first, it was because I couldn't stand to see you crying alone at that grave. No one should face grief like that by themselves. And now, she pressed. He hesitated, then reached over and took her hand. His touch sent a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the evening air. Now it's because I can't imagine starting my day without seeing you, he admitted. Because working beside you feels right in a way nothing else ever has. Pearl's heart hammered in her chest. She should pull her hand away, maintain propriety. But she didn't want to. Instead, she laced her fingers through his. I feel it too, she whispered. Cole's eyes widened slightly, as if he hadn't expected her to be so direct. Then he smiled, a slow, genuine smile that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. I should go, he said reluctantly. It's getting late. But neither of them moved. They sat there, hands entwined, as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Stay, Pearl said finally. There's the spare room. It's late, and it's a long ride back to your place. Cole hesitated, clearly torn between propriety and desire. Just to sleep, Pearl clarified, feeling her cheeks warm. It would be nice not to be alone in the house. He squeezed her hand gently. All right, but I'll be gone before first light. Wouldn't want to give folks cause to talk. Pearl nodded, grateful for his understanding. They went inside, and she showed him to the small room that had once been her father's study. The narrow cot wasn't much, but Cole assured her it was far better than many places he'd slept over the years. That night, lying in her own bed, Pearl felt something she hadn't experienced since before her father fell ill. Peace. And beneath that peace, a flutter of something new and fragile. Something that felt dangerously like hope. Summer bloomed across the Wyoming landscape, painting the prairie with wildflowers and turning the distant mountains a deeper blue against the endless sky. The Patterson ranch flourished under the combined efforts of Pearl and Cole, who continued to spend his days helping her and his nights at his own place most nights. Anyway, occasionally, when work kept them late, he would stay in the spare room, always leaving before dawn. Their relationship deepened with each passing day, growing from friendship into something neither of them had names for yet. They were careful to maintain propriety. Their hands might brush when passing tools. Their gazes might linger longer than necessary. But they never crossed the line that would have set the town's gossips talking. Still, people noticed. When Pearl went into town for supplies, she caught the speculative glances, heard the whispers that fell silent as she approached. Some were disapproving. A young woman alone with a man not her husband was cause for scandal, but others were more sympathetic. The West was hard on women alone, and many understood Pearl's precarious position. On a sweltering August afternoon, Pearl was hanging laundry when she saw a cloud of dust approaching from the direction of town. She shaded her eyes, trying to make out the rider. It wasn't Cole. He had ridden to his own ranch that morning to check on things there. This rider was smaller, and as they drew closer, Pearl recognized Maybelle Johnson, the postmaster's wife and the closest thing Pearl had to a friend in town. Pearl, Maybelle called as she reined in her horse. Thank goodness you're home. Pearl's heart stuttered. What's happened? Is it Cole? Maybelle's expression shifted from urgency to interest at Pearl's immediate concern for Cole, but she pressed on. No, it's not him. It's Henderson from the bank. He's calling in all his loans early, says there's trouble with his Eastern investors. People are saying he's trying to force foreclosures so he can sell the land to the railroad. Cold dread washed over Pearl. When? He's giving everyone 30 days, Maybelle said grimly. I came straight here when I heard. Thought you should know before you get the official notice. Pearl's mind raced. The fall roundup was still 2 months away. There was no way she could make the payment in 30 days. Thank you for telling me, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. After Maybelle left, Pearl sat heavily on the porch steps, trying to think. Everything she and Cole had worked for these past months, all the progress, all the hope suddenly seemed futile. She was still sitting there when Cole rode up an hour later. One look at her face told him something was wrong. Pearl, he asked, dismounting quickly. What happened? She told him about Henderson's demand, watching as his expression darkened. That snake, Cole muttered. He's been planning this all along. What am I going to do? Pearl asked, fighting back tears. She'd done enough crying in recent months. I can't lose the ranch, Cole. It's all I have left of my family. Cole sat beside her, his arm going around her shoulders in a gesture that was both comforting and protective. You're not going to lose it, he said firmly. We'll figure something out. How? She asked. The cattle aren't ready for market. The crops won't be harvested for weeks. I have some savings, but nowhere near enough. Cole was quiet for a moment, his brow furrowed in thought. Then he looked at her, a decision clearly made. Marry me, he said. Pearl stared at him, certain she'd misheard. What? Marry me? He repeated, taking her hands in his. I have savings enough to cover the payment. My place is smaller, but between the two of us we could run both ranches. Cole, Pearl struggled to find words. I can't let you do that. It's your money, your future. A future I want to share with you, he said softly. Pearl, this isn't just about the ranch. I've been trying to find the right moment, the right words. Maybe this isn't how I imagined asking, but the feeling behind it is real. He took a deep breath, his blue eyes never leaving hers. I love you, Pearl Patterson. I think I started falling for you that day in the cemetery, and I've been falling deeper every day since. Marry me not just to save the ranch, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Pearl felt tears welling in her eyes, but for once, they weren't tears of sorrow. You love me, Cole smiled, reaching up to brush a strand of hair from her face. More than I thought possible. I know it's sudden, and if you don't feel the same way, Pearl cut him off by pressing her lips to his. It was their first kiss, impulsive, emotional, and perfect. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing heavily. Is that a yes? Cole asked, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Yes, Pearl whispered. Yes, I'll marry you, because I love you too, Cole Blackwell. The relief and joy that spread across his face made her heart swell. He pulled her close, kissing her again, more deeply this time. For a few blissful moments, the threat of losing the ranch faded into the background, overshadowed by the promise of a future together. When they finally separated, Cole pressed his forehead against hers. We'll go to town tomorrow, he said. Talk to the preacher, make arrangements. Reality intruded on Pearl's happiness. People will talk. They'll say you only married me for the land, or that I trapped you somehow. Cole shook his head. Let them talk. We know the truth. And anyone who's seen us together these past months would have to be blind not to see how we feel about each other. As the sun set over the land that had been her family's for 2 generations, land that would now be shared with the man she loved, Pearl felt a sense of rightness settle over her. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but they would face it together. I never thought I'd find happiness again, she admitted quietly. After Pa died, it felt like my world had ended. Cole pulled her close, his arms strong and secure around her. I made you a promise that day, he reminded her, that you wouldn't cry alone anymore. It's a promise I intend to keep for the rest of our lives. As Pearl leaned against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And that was all that mattered. The town of Timber Creek buzzed with excitement and speculation when word spread that Cole Blackwell and Pearl Patterson were to be married. The ceremony was set for the following Sunday, giving them just enough time to make arrangements while still meeting Henderson's deadline. Pearl spent the days leading up to the wedding in a whirlwind of emotions. Joy at the prospect of marrying Cole warred with anxiety about the rushed nature of it all. She had no proper wedding dress, no family to stand beside her, and the entire town whispering behind their hands about the hasty arrangement. On the Saturday before the wedding, Pearl was at her wits' end. She had been trying to alter her mother's old dress, which she'd found carefully wrapped in the bottom of a trunk. But her sewing skills were limited at best. A knock at the door provided a welcome distraction. She opened it to find Maybelle and 3 other women from town standing on her porch, arms laden with packages. "We thought you might need some help," Maybelle said warmly. "No bride should have to prepare alone." Tears of gratitude sprang to Pearl's eyes as the women bustled in, unpacking their offerings, bits of lace to trim the dress, a borrowed pair of satin shoes, fresh baked pies for after the ceremony. "You don't know what this means to me," Pearl said, overcome by their kindness. Sarah Miller, the oldest of the group, patted her hand. "We know exactly what it means, dear. Each of us came west as young women. We understand how hard it is to face life's milestones without a mother or sisters at your side." With skilled hands, they helped Pearl finish the dress, transforming the outdated gown into something simple but beautiful. As they worked, they shared stories of their own weddings, offering advice both practical and personal. "Marriage is hard work," Sarah told her, "especially out here. But that young man of yours has good eyes. Kind eyes. He'll stand by you." Later that evening, after the women had gone, Cole rode up. Pearl met him on the porch, careful to keep the door closed behind her. "You can't come in," she said, smiling at his confused expression. "It's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding." Cole laughed, the sound warm in the gathering dusk. "I didn't take you for the superstitious type." "I'm not taking any chances," she replied. "Not with our future." He stepped closer, his eyes soft as he gazed at her. "I went to see Henderson today," he said. "Paid the mortgage in full." Pearl's eyes widened. "In full?" "But Cole, that must have been every penny I've saved for the past 5 years," he admitted. "But it was worth it. The ranch is secure now, Pearl. Our ranch." Tears threatened again. She seemed to cry so easily these days, though now it was as often from happiness as from sorrow. "I don't know what I did to deserve you," she whispered. Cole took her hands in his. "You survived," he said simply. "You kept going when it would have been easier to give up. That kind of strength, that kind of heart, that's what I fell in love with." He leaned forward, brushing his lips against hers in a kiss that was both tender and full of promise. "I'll see you tomorrow," he murmured. "I'll be the one waiting at the altar, probably looking terrified." Pearl laughed. "You? The fearless Cole Blackwell? Terrified?" "Absolutely," he confirmed with a grin. "Terrified you might come to your senses and realize you could do better." "Never," she assured him, squeezing his hands. "There is no better, not for me." The church was filled to capacity the next day. It seemed the entire town had turned out to witness the union of Cole Blackwell and Pearl Patterson. Some came out of genuine affection for the couple, others from curiosity about the hasty wedding, but all were caught up in the romance of the occasion. Pearl stood at the back of the church, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Maybelle had helped her with her hair that morning, arranging it in a simple but elegant style crowned with a wreath of wildflowers. The altered dress fit perfectly, its ivory color complementing her fair skin. "Ready?" Sheriff Davis asked, offering his arm. When Pearl had mentioned having no one to walk her down the aisle, the kindly lawman had volunteered, saying it would be his honor. Pearl took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready." The small church organ began to play, and all heads turned as Pearl made her way down the aisle. But she saw only Cole, standing tall and handsome at the altar, his eyes never leaving hers. The love and admiration in his gaze gave her courage with each step. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. They exchanged traditional vows, promising to love and cherish each other through whatever life might bring. When Cole slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother, Pearl felt as though her heart might burst with happiness. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher declared. "You may kiss your bride." Cole's kiss was gentle, mindful of their audience, but filled with the promise of deeper passion to come. When they turned to face the congregation as Mr. and Mrs. Blackwell, the church erupted in applause. The celebration afterward was held at the town hall, where tables groaned under the weight of potluck dishes brought by well-wishers. There was music and dancing, laughter, and more than a few happy tears. As the evening wore on, Pearl found herself standing beside Maybelle, watching Cole as he chatted with some of the ranchers. "He's a good man," Maybelle observed, "and he looks at you like you're the sun and moon combined." Pearl smiled. "I got lucky." "No," Maybelle corrected. "You both did. Finding true love out here isn't easy. Hold on to it with both hands." As if sensing they were talking about him, Cole looked over and caught Pearl's eye. The warmth in his gaze made her blush. "If you two want to slip away," Maybelle suggested with a knowing smile, "no one would blame you. It's been a long day." Pearl hesitated, torn between propriety and desire. But then Cole was beside her, his hand finding hers. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Blackwell?" he asked quietly. The sound of her new name sent a thrill through her. "Yes," she replied. "I am." They said their goodbyes, accepting congratulations and well wishes with grateful smiles. Then Cole helped Pearl into the buggy he'd borrowed for the occasion, and they set off toward the Patterson, now Blackwell Ranch, under a canopy of stars. The house looked different somehow as they approached, warmer, full of promise. Cole insisted on carrying Pearl across the threshold, laughing as he nearly bumped her head on the doorframe. Once inside, a sudden shyness fell over them both. Despite the months of working side by side, sharing meals and conversations, this was new territory. "I'll, give you some privacy," Cole said, gesturing toward the bedroom. "Take all the time you need." Pearl appreciated his consideration. In the bedroom, she carefully removed her wedding dress, hanging it reverently in the wardrobe. She changed into a simple white nightgown, then sat at the vanity to unpin her hair, watching it fall in waves around her shoulders. A soft knock at the door made her heart skip. "Pearl, may I come in?" "Yes," she called, her voice steadier than she felt. Cole entered, having removed his formal jacket and tie. He stopped when he saw her, his eyes widening. "You are so beautiful," he said softly. Pearl stood, suddenly shy again. "So are you." He crossed the room slowly, as if giving her time to change her mind. When he reached her, he cupped her face in his hands, looking at her with such tenderness that her nervousness melted away. "I love you, Pearl Blackwell," he whispered, "more than I have words to say." "Show me," she replied, her voice barely audible. And he did, with gentle hands and reverent kisses, teaching her the language of love that needs no words. Later, as they lay entwined beneath the sheets, Pearl's head resting on Cole's chest, She thought about the journey that had brought them here. From tears at her father's grave to joy in her husband's arms, it seemed impossible that so much could change in just a few months. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "How life can change so quickly," she replied. "How the darkest day of my life led me to you." Cole pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Your father would be happy for you, Pearl. For us." "I think so too," she agreed. "He always said everything happens for a reason, though sometimes the reason takes a while to show itself." They were quiet for a moment, content in each other's arms. Then Pearl propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at her husband's face in the moonlight streaming through the window. "Thank you," she said earnestly. Cole's brow furrowed. "For what?" "For stopping that day at the cemetery. For keeping your promise that I wouldn't cry alone." His expression softened, and he pulled her down for a kiss. "It's a promise I'll keep for the rest of our lives," he murmured against her lips. As spring gave way to summer, and summer to fall, the Blackwell Ranch thrived under their combined care. They worked hard, rising before dawn and often continuing until dusk, but they worked together, finding joy in their shared purpose. Their first anniversary arrived with the spring blossoms, a year to the day since Cole had first seen Pearl crying at her father's grave. They marked the occasion with a visit to the cemetery, placing fresh flowers on Thomas Patterson's grave. "I wish he could have known you," Pearl said, her hand resting protectively over the slight swell of her belly, their first child, due in the fall. Cole wrapped his arm around her waist, his hand covering hers. "He knows," he said confidently, "and he's proud of the woman you've become." As they turned to leave, Pearl cast one last glance at the grave. There were no tears this time, only gratitude for the father who had raised her, and for the twist of fate that had brought Cole into her life on her darkest day. "Ready to go home?" Cole asked. Pearl smiled up at him, her heart full. "Yes," she said, "I'm ready." And together, they walked toward their future, the promise kept between them stronger than ever.